Direct Connection is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you. Live from Maryland Public Television, this is Direct Connection with Jeff Salkin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for Direct Connection. We begin tonight with a debate over how to improve your neighborhood school. The State Commission has released some of its recommendations. Joining us now is the Commission's chairman, Britt Kerwin, the former chancellor of the State University System. Britt, thank you for being with us. Let's start at the beginning. What was the task given to this commission?
Well, Jeff, first let me say it's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for giving me a chance to talk about the Commission's work. The Commission was created in 2016 at the end of the legislative session by Governor Hogan and the General Assembly, and it was given basically a two-part charge. One was to review the current funding formula for K through 12 schools, the so-called Thornton formula. And then a second very important charge, namely to make policy recommendations so that Maryland schools could perform at the level of the best performing schools, not in the U.S., but in the world. So that's a pretty large task.
We had heard for a long time that Maryland was #1 in the nation, according to Education Week magazine, I believe it was. How do you see that? Where do we stand nationally? Right. Where do we stand globally?
Well, the first task of the commission was to sort of dig into exactly where are the Maryland schools at present. If we're supposed to make recommendations so we'll be as good as the best in the world, where are we today? And we found some very unsettling things. First of all, in terms of student learning outcomes assessment, we are very mediocre within the United States. For example, there's an exam called the National Assessment of Education Progress, the NAEP exam. It's given to representative samples of students in all 50 states at the 4th, 8th, and 12th grade. And at the 4th grade level, in math, we rank 29th. In reading, we rank 25th. In 8th grade math, we rank 26th. And so this was a bit unsettling because there is this complacency in the state about the quality of our schools. We also found out that we are spending in Maryland 5% less on schools serving low-income students than we are on schools serving high-income students. This was a great shock to everyone. Obviously, kids in struggling economic circumstances need more resources, and we're not providing those in Maryland. Another thing we found out is that we have a huge teaching shortage in Maryland, and you know, all of this would be bad enough if the U.S. sort of stood out in terms of the quality of its education, but the U.S. in fact is also very mediocre in comparison to other countries. There, in international assessments, we rank in the low 20s or in the 30s in math, science, and reading. So the harsh reality that came to the commission is that the Maryland schools, in terms of things that matter, student learning outcomes, we are a long, long way from being one of the best systems in the world.
Is that something that has changed recently, or even when we were getting the #1 rating from the magazine, were we still middle of the pack on that test?
Well, we were in the middle of the pack on that test, and that ranking, which is something to be proud of, it does measure various things, but it primarily measures sort of input. How many advanced placement courses are offered in the state? How many students are enrolled in advanced placement courses? But the real, at the end of the day, the real test is, what are students learning? And that's why we ought to all be concerned about the status of Maryland schools on this NAEP exam and also the international comparisons. Because, at the end of the day, Jeff, it's in everybody's interest in Maryland for us to have an outstanding school system. When you look at the nature of today's economy, we can't have a strong economy going forward unless we have a well-educated, highly skilled workforce. There's no way for young people to get out of poverty today without a good education. I mean, the quality of life for Maryland in the future is dependent upon us building a really superb school system, and that's what this commission is all about.
Let me remind our viewers, if you have a question about the Kirwan Commission for the chair of the Kirwan Commission, you can give us a call. We'll have the number up on the screen. You can also tweet your questions. The Twitter address here is @MPT News. So to that point, Britt, any real estate agent showing a house in a good school district, that's the first thing they talk about that. And I think what you're saying is as we, as a society, as a global economy, get more sophisticated, more technical, more automated, higher education in particular becomes more important.
Right. Well, and you can't get to higher education really without a good K through 12 system. So here we had this very, very daunting charge: make policy recommendations so that Maryland schools would perform at the level of the best systems in the world. We've had the great good fortune to work with a very highly regarded not-for-profit think tank in Washington, D.C. called the National Center for Education and the Economy. They've spent the last 10 or 20 years studying what makes for strong school systems. What are the elements of the really outstanding school systems? And so we've used their research to benchmark Maryland against 4 international systems and 3 in the U.S. Finland, Ontario in Canada, Singapore and Shanghai, and then New Jersey, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts in the U.S. So we've taken the research from NCEE, and with their help and with the advice of a lot of experts who've come and talked to us, we've done this gap analysis. What is it that the best systems are doing that we're not doing, and how can we close that gap? And so as a result of that deep dive and an extensive study of these high-performing systems, we've ended up making 5 major policy recommendations. Maybe I could just tick them off real quickly. The first recommendation is that we need to make a significant investment in early childhood education. So the commission will be recommending that there be universal access to full-day preschool for all 4-year-olds and all low-income 3-year-olds. We want every kid to have a chance to come to kindergarten ready to learn, and we want to do an analysis so that those who aren't ready to learn can have the resources put around them so they will be successful. The second recommendation is we've got to invest a lot more resources in kids living in challenged circumstances, schools serving high concentrations of poverty, schools, young people with learning disabilities. We're not investing enough money to help these young people. So,
Britt,
for example,
I'm going to pause for a
schools,
second.
Yeah.
Before we get to 3, 4, and 5, let's get a phone call in here from Montgomery County. This is Beth.
Sure, absolutely.
Beth, thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Hi, I was an educator in Montgomery County for over 20 years, and I'm very concerned about some issues that I see. I agree with the speaker that it's important for all children to have early childhood education and availability. But in terms of international competition, it's true that many countries score higher, and I think we need to improve. But we have some of the best innovators ever, and part of that is from the freedom that our children have had that other systems have not. And I just want to say that I have a granddaughter who is suffering terribly, who for the last 5 years has been vivacious and creative and energetic and happy. And her first year in kindergarten has been a nightmare. The push for test scores, she's being tested all the time, age 5, and the pressure being put on her, and her pulled out for special reading. I see her do amazing puzzles. I see her be creative. She builds magnetic tiles.
Beth, let me get a response to that. Very glad you called Britt. Are we too regimented? Are we becoming too regimented?
We are, and one of the recommendations, which we'll get to in a moment, is we need to give teachers much more freedom in the classroom. We are too regimented and too restrictive on what teachers can do to help young people. I think the commission also feels that we do too much testing in the U.S. These high-performing systems do test periodically, but not at the level and frequency that we do here in the United States.
All right. I'm sorry I interrupted the 5 recommendations. We were on number 2.
Yeah, so I was just going to mention, right, so, well, I wanted to mention for the schools serving low-income communities, we need to grow the number of so-called community schools, where there is a supervisor in the school that can reach out to social services and bring them into the school to help these kids living in challenged circumstances. They need to have after-school academic program. They need to have summer academic programs. So that's the second recommendation. The third recommendation is we need to significantly advance teaching as a profession. We need to strengthen our teacher preparation programs. We need to raise standards for teacher certification. We need to create career ladders so high-performing teachers can stay in the classroom. Right now, if you're a good teacher and you need to advance your economic circumstances, you either leave teaching or you have to go into administration. These high-performing systems make it possible for good teachers to stay in the classroom. The fourth recommendation is we have to benchmark our curriculum against international standards and target the 10th grade to determine whether kids are on path to be college and career ready. If they are, we want to have rigorous academic programs in the 11th and 12th grade. Let them take early college, maybe even earn a 2-year degree before they finish high school, or enter into a very rigorous career and technical education program that would lead to an industry certified credential. And then finally, and this is very important, we've got to have a strong system of accountability. I think the general public is interested in supporting education, but people need to know that the money they invest will get the results we all need to see.
Back to the phones, Kent County. Let's talk to Mike. Mike, thanks for the call. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much for my call. And I totally agree that we need to have a benchmark is international in scope. However, why would anyone want to be, and you talk about the teacher shortage, why would anyone who is educated, has a vast amount of experience, want to go into a classroom where there's total uncontrolled chaos, lack of discipline, where the teacher is handcuffed to where he really can enforce a curriculum and discipline within the classroom to really teach those that want to learn. And I'd love to hear your comments.
Mike, you talking about Kent County?
Yes, well,
all right, Britt, I'll let you comment on that.
Sure, yeah. Well, I think the caller is on to a very important point that the commission feels very strongly about. We want, teaching has to become a high status profession, and teachers need to be compensated at the level of other professions that require similar levels of education education, like architects, nurses, CPAs. And so we need to attract a caliber and quality of teachers. We have excellent teachers in some of our schools, but we need to have an abundant supply of excellent teachers who will know how to deal with these classroom issues. They'll have the kind of training that we see in these high-performing systems. So, having as I say, an ample supply of high-quality, high-ability teachers, professionally trained and appropriately recognized and rewarded and compensated, that is absolutely critical to building the kind of system we want to see in Maryland.
Let me get to the elephant in the room here, which is that the commission, the final report, when it's out in a few months, is expected to call for billions in additional state spending, which obviously can't be done without a tax increase. That was the history, if you go back 15 years to Thornton, 15 years before that to Apex. So, two-part question. One, is there evidence that the previous infusions of money have made a difference? And second, how would you convince voters, legislators from parts of the state like Montgomery County to get behind something where the benefit of it may go largely to other places? Yeah.
Well, speaking about the previous commission, the so-called Thornton Commission, it did a lot of good things. It was asked basically to create a new funding formula for K through 12 education. It didn't really look at the big policy issues that we were asked to look at. And I've talked to Alvin Thornton, the chair of that commission, and he feels that whereas good came out of the work of that commission for sure, there was insufficient accountability for the use of the funds. And that's why the commission I'm privileged to chair has made such an issue of accountability. Now, in terms of, what's the price tag going to be, that's the work we're doing right now. We've decided on these 5 major policy areas that we need to develop, and we're going to cost them out over the next several months. And we will give a cost figure in our final report. It's hard for me to say at this point what that number is going to be, but I will say that it's just so very important for Maryland and for all of the citizens of Maryland that we build a superb, outstanding school system. Our future depends upon it. I can't think of anything more important for the future of our state than building a world-class K through 12 system.
Let's take a call from Anne Arundel County. This is Arthur. Arthur, thank you for calling. Go ahead. Arthur, are you there?
My question was, the statistics in the beginning of the program were a little down compared to the Maryland to the world. I'm just wondering if any private school data was factored into that assessment and where we are.
Just looking at public school systems, right, Britt?
Right. Yeah, that's an excellent question, but our charge is to look at the public school system, so we have not looked at private school data.
And when it comes to the formula itself, in terms of equalizing or trying to equalize the spending wherever you are in the state, what's your sense of what changes might be necessary?
Well, for one thing, we're going to have to invest, as I said earlier, significantly more funds in schools serving high concentrations of poverty. We are currently the 15th most regressive state in the union in this regard. I think it came as a big shock to all of us that we're not providing better resources to communities serving high concentrations of poverty. I think folks in Annapolis, the people at the DLS, Department of Legislative Services, all found that surprising. So the formula will have to adjust that issue. And of course, there are communities across the state that have different sources of wealth, and just as with the Thornton formula, that will have to be factored into our final recommendations. But we're now set to do this detailed work of the cost of our recommendations, and we will build a new funding formula with weights to address the funding equity issues.
Call from Cecil County. This is Mike. Mike, you're on MPT. Go ahead. Mike, are you there?
Yes.
What's your question, sir?
My name is Mike, and I'm just curious about disciplines, some of the discipline situations, and it's hard for teachers that I know personally that they don't have a lot of support from parents with disciplining their children. They just kind of lay it on the educator's lap to be their babysitters, and it's tough for teachers, and they certainly are underpaid.
Mike, thanks for the phone call. And one thing we haven't talked about a whole lot here is the importance of parents broadly in the success of their students' education.
Right, and obviously that's an enormously important factor. Kids that come from families where there's a lot of parental support and the resources to get all sorts of enrichment built into their education are at a huge advantage. But that's not the circumstances for vast numbers of kids in our state, and we can't fix that problem in the short run. So that's why we have to invest resources in these schools serving high concentrations of poverty, so that the kinds of social services and support systems that many other kids have living in more affluent communities are available to these young people. Look, there's no way for young people today who are living in areas of poverty to get out of poverty if they don't get a good education. So it works to everyone's advantage if we can build the quality of schools across the state and in all communities that give every kid a chance to succeed.
Britt, we have a bunch of calls here. We'll take another call or two if you don't mind staying with us. Let's go out to Frederick County and talk to Brian. Brian, thank you for calling. Go ahead. Brian, are you there? Wait for the delay for a second. Brian, you're on. Go ahead. All right, we'll move on from Brian. I thought one of the more intriguing things you mentioned was the idea of having a decision point in the 10th grade and basically two tracks.
Right.
It's either college or it's some other life skill, employable skill.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of more of a European model. Is that going to fly here?
Well, many states are starting to look at that. I don't want to call them tracks, because even in the kind of career and technical education track, or I said track, pathway, there would be rigorous academic courses. It would enable kids, when they finish that pathway, either to go to college or to go into the workplace with an industry certified credential. Right now, we target the 11th grade to decide if kids are on path to be ready for college and career. And that means that we don't know until they're in the 12th grade whether or not they are, and you can't do much once you wait till the 12th grade. So this model would give us 2 years, as I say, to enable kids to take early college courses, maybe get a 2-year degree, learn the skill to, if they so desired, to go into some profession right out of high school and start on a high-earning career path. As I say, this is a concept that I think is beginning to be fully appreciated in the U.S., you see states all across the nation beginning to look at a more rigorous career and technical education pathway. And we think we can place, with these recommendations coming from the Commission, we think we can place Maryland in a leadership position in what I'm confident is going to be a wave of the future. We just have a minute. Let's get a quick question from Jim in Carroll County. Jim, what's your question?
Hi. We've skirted around discipline in the schools, but I don't know if you can hear me.
Sure. Finish up, sir.
All right. We've skirted around the discipline and how do you teach if you don't have discipline. But what's more important, you're spending a lot of money or asking to spend a lot of money on schools. How are we going to spend it on security, and is there going to be enough money left for the schools by the time you cover the security?
Very good. Sir, thank you. Britt, just a sentence on that. Well, all these factors will go into our consideration of the cost of building the kind of school system where kids are safe, they get a great education, and leads to a bright future for them. Dr. Kerwin, we got to leave it right there. Sir, we appreciate your time. We appreciate everybody joining us for Direct Connection. Have a good night.
Your health segments are a co-production of Maryland Public Television and the University of Maryland Medical System.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.